Hello, welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. This week, my guest is Mark Forbes. Mark is a photographer with European roots, but now based in Australia. I came across his work quite by accident when I was looking at cool medium format photos online and decided to get in touch to see if he'd like to be on the show. Thankfully for me and you, he said yes, and you'll get to hear about his process, his adventures in bookmaking, and the value that he feels a bit of distance from the moment of capture can make to your relationship with what you're making. It's classic Prime Lenses. Here's my chat with Mark. You're a bit of a triple threat on the photographic front, in that I think your conceptual kind of stuff like the dance stuff that you've done, or the things that you've photographed of kind of evidence of people in sort of locations is really beautiful, but your street work's really good as well, and your portraitures. So if we can start with a kind of what attracted you to photography in the first place, I guess, and first puts a camera in your hand, and then we'll kind of use that as a jumping off point to lenses and things.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to chatting. So I think the first thing that really attracted me to photography was just the desire to literally capture something that was happening from a documentary memory point of view. Um, and yeah, it was really when I was at school in Holland, and I was leaving Holland to come to Australia at that time. And I was in year 9, so sort of high school, medium high school. And back then, yeah, there was we weren't allowed to take cameras to school. I mean, it's probably quite similar today. And yeah, it was my last day because I was moving overseas. So I snuck in a little film point and shoot and took some photos of my friends. And that was my first desire to want to actively take photos for myself, was to capture my friends and a memory that was critically important to me. So that was my first real sort of desire, drive.
And do you still have those photos?
I'm sure there's probably somewhere. There, I wouldn't have the negatives, but there's probably prints somewhere in the house, in some box, in some cupboard. Yes.
I found some from when I was in sixth form, and similar sort of motivation, I guess. We were coming to the end of school and we were all going off out into the world and doing different things. So I must have been like 17, 18. And the harsh flash photography, like before American Apparel made it cool.
I've never been much of a flash user. I mean, it might have been on auto mode,
Yeah.
but I suspect from my memory of them, the ones outside I don't think had flash, but there would have been some taken in the corridor that would have been pretty dim and dingy. So the auto flash probably kicked in. You're probably right.
And so from there, is it kind of education, further schooling that kind of attracts you to art and media and things like that? Like you mentioned your parents up top, were they supportive of a creative lifestyle? Were you around art a lot growing up?
Not so much, no. Probably, yeah, more technical education. I think art sort of came in my mid sort of 20s, I suppose, in terms of just a path that I wanted to investigate. So that was probably just more self-learning and self-motivation to want to create things. Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. You mentioned like a bit of technical, because I have this kind of potted theory that I like in the podcast, which is that traditionally we put creative and kind of engineering type things in different boxes. Like there's the sort of art and design over here, and there's maths and science and engineering kind of over on the other side. And I think actually they're all part of the same thing. Did you have then a technical education? Was it maths and engineering initially that attracted you?
Yeah. So I have an engineering qualification, and I think that looking at the way that I approach compositions, not only technically from that point of view, but also visually from an architectural perspective. I think that also, and I've shot architectural work as well for architects. And I think that
Hmm.
when I'm shooting that work, I'm also able to take ways of approaching scenes and ways of framing into shooting separate work, the more, I guess, creative work that I enjoy shooting. So I think it all genuinely is a whole sort of melting pot of how you approach things. And I think, yeah, people were able to take different skills into the ways that they're able to frame up and and also I guess logistically in terms of if you're doing a portrait shoot and if you need to arrange things. So aside from actually pushing the button, there's various, cross pollinations that you can take from other aspects of your life.
Yeah, when you're doing some of that, I noticed with your dance photography, especially, that there's a lot of shots through doorways and through buildings, and there is a very much an architectural and cinematic
Yeah.
element to that. Like I thought, evoke things like The Shining, and so like corridors, and people who like just like Kubrick like to shoot down things. Are you arriving with that very much in mind with a lot of those kinds of shots, or is some of it emerging with the person that you're
No, no,
photographing?
that's a really good question. So on what you're speaking about there specifically, that series of works with the ballerina, yeah, I think that's what you're talking about. I was
Mm.
actually commissioned to shoot a historic building that had been was coming back to a council in Australia's possession, and it had been away from them for 15 years on a loan to someone else or another school, and then they were getting it back, and so they wanted me to go in and document the building. So the brief literally was, we want you to go in and document the building and make three pieces out of it that they were going to then use on these really big, like 3 meter by 3 meter-ish light boxes. So that was like the presentation to show that people in the local area, this possession was, I guess, back in, local council's hands. So my brief was just open, like, go and shoot this old, amazing rundown building, which was like the best brief you could get. Um, and that was why the curator actually engaged me for that. But as I was shooting, I was thinking, what am I going to do? I wanted to do something more than purely architectural shots of the building. I wanted to work with the ballerina, and the ballerina was just something that I've wanted photographed since I was really small. I just had this idea of the ballerina for various reasons, and it was like I really appreciate the way that they have to work exceptionally hard, and you don't see any of that. All you see is the on stage, but behind that on stage, that 5%, there's 95% of this exceptional effort and graft that you never get to witness. And I just really respected that. Apart from the fact that, it's aesthetically beautiful from a choreography and from a poise and from I guess, a portraiture perspective, it was also everything else that was embodied inside that I wanted to bring into the house. So once I had the idea of working with a ballerina, the way that I approached the house is I went there on my own and walked around it and figured out what times the lights would be in certain parts of the room during the day, so that I sort of, was pre-prepared. And then worked in there on a different day with the ballerina, and we sort of flowed around the house and moved around the house to follow the light and where I was anticipating it would sort of be. So
It's very much the 95% of what you're doing as well versus the 5% push the button, right? Are you a collaborator with that person in constructing those portraits? Or have you, because you've been
yeah,
around, are you looking at it and going, yeah, I want that shot with you at the
yeah,
end?
yeah, yeah. So it was definitely a bit of both. So I definitely scoped out the areas that I wanted to photograph in the house and the key rooms and the features that I wanted to utilize, the light, the arches, the whichever part of the day that the light was flowing around. And so I was quite, I had those preconceived ideas of how I wanted to frame it. But in terms of when we got there, in terms of how she was working on a pose or a piece of dance that I was trying to capture, that was obviously very interactive with her and seeing how she interpreted the space. So it was really lovely to. I'm really, I guess, as you can see from my work that I'm really I put a lot of weight on a given scene I guess a view of a given room. So I brought those ideas, and then she came along with the poses and whatever else, and we worked together. So yeah,
Hmm.
that was a really collaborative effort. And I guess that's why you can see that the doorways and whatever and the specific light feature quite heavily because that's coming from my point of view. And then I was working here into the scene in terms of where to put her, and then we worked on the poses. Yeah.
It's really great work, and it speaks, I think, the reason it fits so nicely in your work, and in contrast to the street stuff a little, but there's an inevitability, I think, to the scenes in your pictures somehow. That it just sort of arrives fully formed in a really, as a viewer, it's really satisfying because even if you're just photographing, I say just, but even if it's things that you appear to have found, like evidence of people without the people and things like that, your compositions seem very carefully constructed in a way that like seems straightforward, and I'm assuming is not. Do you like to spend, like a bit like being in the building, do you like to spend a lot of time in the place before you even do anything?
I'm not. I do like to spend a lot of time in the place, but not from the point of view of trying to more from the point of view that I like to give myself time to find the right image, but often more often than not, and going back to what you said just before, I'm highly specific and considered in terms of the final frame. Like I spend time to get it right, and I'm OCD about lines and everything else, and you know, height of camera and camera angle and those sort of things, and how those things make an impact to the viewer. But going back to what you were saying just then, more often than not, I find that the first gut feeling that I have in terms of a framing and a composition from a camera angle perspective of a scene is often the shot that I come back to and I go, that's the one that's the most interesting. I might walk around a scene and go, and evaluate it, but 8 times out of 10, it's more that gut feeling drives me towards the first positioning, and I'm like, okay, that's how I want to photograph it. If it's super interesting, I might take a number of different angles, or if it's an amazing building, I want to spend hours in there and go and investigate everything else. But it's not like I spend a lot of time initially trying to find that. It's more I find that the scene itself and the composition is a gut feeling that grabs me, and that's the way that I want to interpret it.
And is a lot of your work personal or commissioned, or because I would assume that, I mean, obviously architectural work is commissioned, and I've been in building projects where you brought a photographer in to work with architects afterwards, and that's really exciting because you get access to a space that no one's actually used yet in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, or it's just you just got to do it while it's clean, and before people come in and start walking mud in or whatever. But for a lot of your stuff that sort of seems very found, is that how you want it to feel, and actually it isn't quite as found as that, or are you on the lookout for places?
Um, I'd say probably 95% of what you can see, maybe even more, is genuinely found. So I spend a lot of time. I definitely, if I'm going somewhere specific, like if I'm going overseas, I will do enough groundwork research that I'm not going to be, that I'm getting the best out of my time when I'm there. But it's still very much only the surface, scratching the surface level of what you actually find when you get there, because you can have no idea. So it's making sure you've done enough groundwork if it's something substantial to make the best use of your time. But again, once you're there, it's genuinely just hitting the ground around, walking around, opening doors and heading down alleyways and trying to find your way into buildings and using your worst Portuguese that you can to ask a question if they'll let you go open a door. Like it's just
Yeah.
genuinely being persistent and yeah, and a process of yeah, in being investigative and intuitive, I suppose. Yeah.
I've definitely struggled with that kind of being a little bit cheeky, for want of a better word, of going, can I just do, you kind of don't want to, or me personally at least, worry about being a burden. I've tried to like let go of that because I'm doing this for a living for one thing now. Like, so you need to kind of tease and poke at stuff, otherwise it's not an interesting conversation. But it's the same photographically, like poking at doors. Did that come quite naturally to you, that you were just like, I want to see what's behind there, or
Yeah, I think yeah, I think inquisitive, and also I think it perpetuates itself because it's like you have to sort of push yourself a little bit further each time to get something interesting. And I think once you find those interesting scenes, it's addictive. It's genuinely addictive. And therefore you're like, oh, I just really feel like there's an amazing scene around here. And you feel like you've missed out on your day if you haven't got to see what's there. So it becomes a drive. And as well, I think that a big part of shooting various film cameras is that that becomes an opening to talk to someone because they're like, oh, he's got a camera. I can see it's for 60 years old. He's not about to upload it to some terrorist surveillance website. It's like it's genuinely an interest, and so I think that becomes a diffuser and a icebreaker in conversations where you're asking people. And like I've been on the other side of the world and I can't speak any of the local language, but I pull out the camera, I put it on the desk, and I write a few questions in Google Translate, and then 9 times out of 10, people are super happy to just nod and smile and see what you've done. So it becomes an aid in assisting you.
Yeah, you have to kind of give yourself the space, don't you? I was in Menorca recently for a photo festival, and they had an exhibition around the place, and there was a woman there who only spoke Spanish, and we just went around this exhibition, and she just spoke to me in Spanish for about 10 minutes, and I kind of understood bits of it, and it was fine. But it was just this nice sharing of things. She was interested to tell me about the traditions that had been photographed and why they were important, and I recorded it, and later on could kind of piece it together and went back. But I think we need to give ourselves the space for that. Like, there's this idea that like the street photographer is some crazy fast moving Joel Meyerowitz, and like you don't have to be.
No, I mean, if that's your thing, then absolutely. But
Yeah,
there's multiple different ways that you can approach street photography or any kind of photography. Yeah.
I liked the set on your website. You've got the photos in Italy, and then I could see the DNA of that, I think, in the one when you photographed in Sydney in 2018. We were in Sydney last year, and so I recognised like the beach and the views, like we were there, sort of could see all of that stuff. When that one felt like you had more of a maybe an objective in 2018 than the Italian. The Italian stuff felt like more like you were there, you were in Italy, so of course you were going to photograph it, and of course you were going to run around and capture it. But I wonder if there's any similarity in the way that because you don't live in Sydney,
No.
so whether you could approach that like a tourist almost, or like with external eyes.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point. I think I live in Melbourne, and I think that I find, and having said that, I do genuinely still try to head out and find interesting scenes in my local in Melbourne, but I think it's much easier um, to do it when you're not in your local neighborhood because everything is new and fresh and interesting. But I guess the flip side of that is that if you're in your local neighborhood, you know where things are and you've got a little bit better, I guess, local understanding to help you get around town. But yeah, I think everything becomes an adventure when you're not in your local area. So I think, yeah, the photographing of Sydney is from essentially a tourist's eyes from my point of view. So I can see why it would be somewhat similar to the Italian work. Yeah.
Who do you kind of draw inspiration from? Like the photograph that's behind you is sort of like a building with fence and stuff at like either dawn or sunset, or lower light. Feels a very Meyerowitz-y peak. The stuff that he did when he went to medium format and stuff. But I just wondered who actually inspires you and kind of has fed you photographically.
Yes, so the photograph behind me is actually a Todd Hardo photograph.
There we go.
So that's from his house hunting book, which I'm sure some of your listeners would like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of I didn't actually start really looking heavily at other photographers' work until probably sort of 5 or 6 years ago. I sort of just operated in my own little bubble, but more recently, I think there's a few photographers that I really like, and I've now got a pretty nice collection of some books. That's my thing now is just spending money on photo books, which I think is lovely. Um, but in terms of the photographers on the shelf, Eggleston, Heido, Gregory Crutzen, who else? Lynn Cohen is a lovely Canadian photographer. Um, I've got a few books from painters, Stephen Shaw, Fred Herzog, Trent Park. So uh, there's a few, I guess, um, more classic street photographers. I mean, Trent Park's earlier work is very much in that vein. But then you've also got like the classic Americana of, Eggleston and Crutzen is
Mhm.
are obviously American. And they tend to be there's obviously portraiture in there from those two, but some of the other works I like from Shaw and whatnot, I mean, they're more environmental and maybe some of them are less person based. So I think there's various different kinds of work that I like. Yeah.
The photo book habit, I think, comes for us all. I've since starting to do this, especially I'm getting because you end up buying. I get attacked on both sides because I end up buying the books of people who have on because they come back on to talk about their book, and so then I go, oh, I've got to get your book. And then also there's like you said, there's the classics. The really good one I picked up recently was the one of the behind the scenes photography of the Dune films.
Oh,
That's yeah, that's real. There's some good stuff in there. It's also a beautifully bound thing.
yeah. I think it does make it like aside from the work, obviously giving the book is it's such a tangible thing. I think having something that is well put together, well thought out, is just adds to the experience of the photography, which is what the whole purpose of the book's about, I guess, is presenting it in a way that is interesting and but also respects the work. Yeah.
So when you're photographing, you mentioned earlier, like when you're photographing film, especially, that's a good kind of jumping off point with people, and that's probably a good way into some lenses and a little bit of gear. What do you like? I found you through medium format work. It was some of your work I saw online, which really I thought was like, wow, love that. But what do you shoot? Are you all medium format all the time? I think you've used an M6 in the past.
Yep.
What are your kind of daily drivers?
Yeah, so I have shot various different cameras and different formats from like 35 mil panoramics. I was using an X-Pan for a very short period of time.
Hmm.
But I find that over time, the two sort of, I guess, aspect ratios that I really appreciate shooting is medium format on the square. So I shoot on a Rolleiflex and I shoot that's the workhorse that shoots probably 90%, maybe 95%. And
Right.
then I also shoot a 6.7 and a Mamiya 7. Yeah, and I recently picked up a medium format digital. So, but most of the work, if it's sort of, I guess, personal work that we're talking about on my website and whatnot, that's it was shot on the Rolleiflex or the Mamiya 7. I do also have a Hasselblad, but I just found that to be a bit cumbersome to use. I just found that the form factor and the usability of the Rolleiflex works for me. I know some people can't do it, but some people much prefer a Hassie. But yeah, I just found it heavier, more cumbersome to use, and just didn't work for me. But it's fun. I've taken some nice photos with it, but I just, from a usability point of view, the Rolleiflex is much nicer. And I guess the difference between the Rolleiflex versus the Mamiya 7 is, inherently where you're framing at. Obviously, the Rolleiflex, you're framing at waist level versus the Mamiya 7, you're at eye level. So that gives you a different compositional element to deal with. And then some scenes work better in one than the other. But I just tend to find that in terms of the form factor for the rectangle, sorry, the square, and the aspect ratio, just makes sense for my eye and how I want to compose, and also the composing from waist level. I also just seem to find it makes more interesting compositions for me.
I've definitely found stuff like that with the angle. I used to shoot a lot with a GR3, which was a very, very small camera and very quiet. And because you were shooting on a screen with autofocus, you could kind of move it around and sort of, and then when I switched to using the M, I noticed that my photos started to look the same all the time because I wasn't crouching, old man, wasn't crouching down as much. It wasn't like moving, whereas with a tiny light camera, you just sort of throw it
Yeah.
around and you don't even think about it. And it's like, I love using the M, but it is a shortcoming of that very manual. You've really got to be looking through the viewfinder to kind of get any sense of composing anything useful. I mean, unless you're a ninja like Alan Schaller, someone like that, but I'm not. Maybe it's time to get a cue like Jesse Marlowe.
Yeah. I do have, I mean, they're the main cameras. I do have a little GR X, is it? The GR, yeah, the Ricoh. That's a
The
lovely camera. Yeah,
3X, yeah.
it's like tiny, takes incredible photos. But obviously you need to look on the back of it because there's no viewfinder. And if that's all I've got, or I need a wider lens and I've only got the other two and it works, great. But I just find that very disconcerting in terms of how I compose. So yeah, it's more of an emergency camera, but the best camera is the one you've got on you, so or the one that fits the scene that you want. So and it's small.
I do like the idea of an emergency camera. You know, people talk about everyday carry, and this is your emergency carry. It's like this the glove box camera.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And if it takes up a tiny little bit of room in a bag, and if you've run out of film and it saves the day with a photo, then great. Yeah.
Jasper Ford, who was on the show once, talked about saving he shoots exclusively film because he says digital images look plastic to him, like they just don't look right. And he was talking about like saving one for the Yeti. So when you're on the way back to the car, you leave one frame on the roll just in case.
Yeah, I do appreciate that because more often than not, if I'm only out with my film cameras and I'm having a great time and I've only I've got so many rolls and I've burnt through today, you will guarantee after you've shot that last frame there will be the scene that you want to shoot. So yeah, I'm very conscious when I get down to my last frames and my last roll of do I need to take this photo or should I just wait?
Just in case. But then you get home and then you've got one you need to finish. You feel like psychologically, you end up with loads of mirror selfies or pictures of a cat.
I don't have a cat and I don't take selfies of myself, but I know some people do.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, sorry, I do.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
taken them very occasionally, but yeah, I would be nice to have a cat to take a picture of. That's for sure.
This is why I have kids. Like they're for better or worse, they've become the unwitting subjects, and you know the preteen is starting to get a bit bored of my taking photos of him.
Sure, understandably.
Yeah, the little one is a model in the making. He is very happy to be in front of the camera at all times, but I've got to be careful and get that balance right. So when you were mentioning shooting a bunch of different, there's a bunch of different focal lengths there, but I find it interesting that you've picked the 40mm GR, and from the pictures of yours I've seen, there seems to be a kind of 35, 40, 50-ish natural field of view equivalency. Is that what you're going for with your images?
I guess yes, I mean, yes, it is. And it took me a while to get to that point. I think when I was shooting 35mm initially, after a while I settled, and then when I was shooting a more sort of people-based street photography on the M6, I was shooting on a 35mm lens. And that felt nice and it felt perfect for what I was doing. But then as I changed from that to shooting more medium format, it just, I mean, the Rolleiflex has a fixed lens, so you get what you get, but it just fits a slightly tighter frame from a lens point of view. And then I found when I was shooting the Mamiya 7, the same sort of 80mm lens, which falls into about a 40mm, so very similar. Yeah, that seems to be my favorite sort of length to work in. So I think, yeah, and then yeah, when I decided to get a Ricoh, yeah, that was why I went for the X, was I was like, that seemed to be the sort of focal length that made sense from how I want to represent things and how I see.
A friend of mine talks about his photos wanting to make them so that like you could almost step into them. And I think there's something about that kind of focal length that does make it, you can sort of see it and immediately, it's not ultra wide like a 21 or like a 28 where there's a bit of distortion or something like that. It's you can just walk into it.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that part of what
I think I think it not I think maybe subconsciously. It's definitely, given it's supposed to be around about the focal length of your eye, I suppose that makes sense. I think with wide angle lenses, and I did used to shoot a little bit of that. Yeah, I think from a viewer's point of view, you feel disconnected because it's not the natural way that you would see. But then conversely, if you think about a telephoto lens, it gives you a lot of compression and therefore the scene doesn't feel natural either. So it doesn't feel like you can step in. So I think, yeah, what you've said there makes sense. And I've had people talk about some of my photos saying that they genuinely feel like they're standing in the photo, on the edge of the photo. And I think if you can do that, it just assists people in connecting with what you're trying to depict to them. So I think it's a nice way to present things.
So you're going out for a shoot tomorrow, you're picking up the camera bag, maybe the emergency GR is in there. I love that. That's going to stick around. But you're picking up the Rolly typically, and then Hassie sounds like it stays at home. Is the digital medium format coming as well? I'm assuming it's a Fuji film.
It was a Fuji film, but I swapped it over. I actually picked up a Hasselblad recently, X2D.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've more recently been bringing that with me, and part of the reason for that is I was on a trip a few years ago in Korea and Japan, and I had with me. I actually had the Fuji at that time, the mini format Fuji, and I had that with me at the time, and I wasn't sort of bringing it with me for anything specific. It was like, okay, well, I'll bring it with me, and I ended up breaking both my Rolleiflex and my Mamiya 7 on the trip. So that actually
Oh
led
no.
genuinely became my main camera after that. And if I'd been away for 3 weeks and didn't have a camera, and I was shooting stuff that I needed to shoot, like I was, I had a project that I was shooting. So I think, yeah, that sort of opened my eyes to you really need to have plan B when you're shooting things. So,
Yeah.
when I've shot like, if I'm shooting specific paid work, then, I would always have a digital camera with me and I'd have a backup and whatnot. But I think, this was on a personal project where I was shooting some work and I was like, okay, now really need to start traveling properly with a suitable backup. Yeah.
I borrowed a Fujifilm GFX medium format recently. It was the one with the integrated lens, the 100 RF. So it's a 28 kind of equivalent field of view. Which is pretty wide, but it was nice. It was fun to play with. You can get kind of lost in the texture and the detail of those bigger files,
Oh,
and it's I have shot a little bit of medium format film, and it's the same sort of thing. You just spend a lot of time looking. It's like, look at the knitting. Like, it's just, it looks amazing.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I mean, yes, having shot, the medium format digital, like your ability to zoom in and see details that you shouldn't be able to is actually ridiculous. But having said that, I do. There is something tangible about. I've shot the same scene with both, film and digital, and more often than not, I just enjoy the rendering of the digital, sorry, the film file, the colors straight off the bat, and the intangible feeling of the image, which sounds a lot like a lot of waffle, but it's for me, it genuinely is there. So yeah, I mean, I think, and you can obviously zoom in and do whatever else, pixel peep with film scan files. But the whole one of the reasons why I actually went to shooting medium format in the first place is because I really enjoy printing big. 1 meter, 1.2 meters by that sort of ratio. And that sort of led me to, I guess, try out, amongst other reasons, the medium format cameras, and so that's part of the reason why I want to use those cameras is so that I can print the images big, because I think, there's a whole level of gravity that is different when you view an image at scale versus when you view an image, 6 by 4 or on someone's screen. Like the print shows things in a whole nother depth. So yeah, that's just, part of my whole process is on certain images knowing that I want to eventually print it that big.
I think you're absolutely right. Like the printing stuff, I've said it before on the show, but like that's when I notice what I got wrong in a way that I don't quite notice it on the screen. I don't know whether I just don't spend enough time looking at it, or high pixel resolution screens, kind of phone screens make everything look incredible. This is why this is the digicam thing, is like people are running around shooting things on old, 10-year-old, 20-year-old Canon digital cameras, and you go, oh, it looks kind of okay. And then I've got one or something, or a friend, and I'll look at the pictures on the screen and I go, these are awful.
Yeah.
Like, this is just like, we have definitely made progress. But I don't know, it's I guess people want fewer choices, which is sort of what you're saying about film as well, right? It's making some decisions like dynamic range and things are sort of taken out of your hands.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I'm not going to try and sit here and sell film, but I think there's multiple reasons why I use it, and one of them is that it forces a set of limitations on you as a photographer. I mean, you cannot change the ISO. Yes, you can push it or pull it, but you make that decision before you shoot your first shot of the roll, or you change your mind after the end of the roll, and all of them get processed in the same way. So you set with your ISO. Um, you're more often than not on some of the cameras, like the Rolleiflex, or if you've only got one lens in the Mamiya, for example, then you're set with a focal length. So that's taken out of the equation. So then what you've got to work with is your aperture, your shutter speed, and your composition. So it makes all of these limitations actually force you to be slightly more, I find, creative, and you push yourself to take shots that you otherwise might not have got because you could dial up your ISO. And I remember I this sort of came home to me when I was shooting the M6 in Japan, like back in like 10 years ago in Tokyo. And it was like nighttime and I'd loaded up some triacs, I think it was. And I was shooting like, 1 second, 2 second exposures of, passing taxis and whatever else. Whereas if I'd have had my digital camera with me, I would have dialed it up to 6400 and got such a different shot. So it genuinely, the limitations force you to work in a different way and get images that you otherwise wouldn't have got. So that part of its limitations actually, yeah, it engages you creatively and it makes it more of a challenge, which is part of the fun of heading out as a photographer, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think limitations and restrictions I think are really good. And as you were saying there, I was thinking, when you've got aperture, shutter speed, and composition, that's still three things. That's still quite a lot of things to be thinking about and focusing on. If you add in everything else, I think it's easy to get decision paralysis.
Yes.
It's like having too many cameras or too many lenses.
Without a doubt. Like, and I've been in that situation myself that, I might have gone on a trip and I might take like four cameras or whatever. And you're like, oh, I want to take this camera back, I want to take that, and the photo's disappearing, and you're standing there in paralysis over 10 minutes about
Yeah.
what focal length you want. But if you go out with one camera in one bag, which I have done a lot of times, and one focal length, and you're forced to move your feet to get into the composition, not only do you sort of, I find it more enjoyable, but you seem to be able to engage more in the moment of what you're doing because you're not in decision paralysis. So it enables you to be more present in what you're doing. So I think it's, yeah, creatively, it's actually, it's better to have more limitations than not.
When you're then taking those images, and you mentioned you were printing and processing and stuff, is there? I know there's a lot of photographers in Melbourne, so I'm assuming there's a fairly good supporting apparatus around photography in Melbourne that you can go to some good places for printing, and you've been doing this. Have you got kind of like a few trusted places that you can go to now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if shooting from a film point of view, in terms of like what do we need to support us, obviously, this if you don't want to do your own deving and scanning, whatever. I mean, some people do. That's great. I don't. So you need a lab to do your deving. You need someone to do your scanning for you. There's plenty of choice in Melbourne. There's a pretty good creative community here. And then from a printing point of view, yes, I think there's sort of three or four printers that I have worked with previously. I know their output. I'm happy with it. Yeah, so it's pretty good to be able to, yeah, pretty easy to be able to get what you need. I think once you're hooked into and find your people and do your tests with them, I think, yeah, it's a pretty good place. Yeah.
And were they the same people you worked with on the book? Because you produced a book just over a year ago, is that right?
Uh, it was about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, two.
No, so the
Gosh.
book was printed in Berlin, actually. So, and I guess printing point of view with prints, very different to four color CMYK for a book. So no, very, very distinctly different. Yeah.
And were you so back and forth with? Did you get to go out and see it printed, or did they send you like print proofs? How was
They
that?
no, they did some proofs. They DHL or FedEx them out to me, and then I reviewed them and I signed off on them and then I posted them back. And then they did the print run and they videoed it for me and sent me a little video of it. I would have loved to have been there, but just
Mm.
to head across the world for a 1 day print job was a little bit much. But no, it was yeah, I guess distance has challenges, but it's anything can be worked around. So yeah.
But must be a really exciting process that though, because you kind of the culmination of a bunch of things. It feels like books, pulling a bunch of work together like that. Was that when you finally got it in your hand? What was that like?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was, I guess there was nervousness from proofs might be different to print and, has it all come out right? So there was definitely significant nervousness. But yeah, when I opened it and flicked through it, it calmed my nerves. That was great. But the whole process was a blast. Like it was really enjoyable. Um, you know, yeah, in the book, it's 5, 6 years of photos. So the process of culling hard to figure out what you really wanted in there, sequencing, making it, trying to feel that the book was cohesive thematically, making sure that I guess the editing process of each image felt cohesive from a colors point of view, from a light point of view, in terms of how did it all sit together as a story. Like, yeah, it felt like a significant achievement to pull it all together. And yeah, the whole process was fun. It was really enjoyable.
So for projects like that and your commercial work, like I like to ask people who are sort of doing this for reals, because I joke I'm a tourist, right? So I just get to enjoy photography and then talk to photographers. But in terms of a lot of us listening are hobbyist enthusiast. For you, what's the split of your time between kind of commercial and projects that you want to get off the ground that might become commercial? They might become books, might become other things. Are you like a one for them, one for me kind of person, or do you always have multiple plates on the go?
Yeah, I have multiple, I guess, avenues from a photo point of view. The books and the prints and whatnot, I do enjoy spending a fair bit of time on that. But then, yeah, there's, I guess licensing of images, commissions, and then working with client work is all important. Having said all of that, I should say that I don't work full time as a photographer, so I do work part time as a photographer. I've got another part time role outside that, and part of the reason that I decided to do that was that if I was working full time as a photographer, I knew that I would be, I guess, constantly having to shoot things that I was being directed by people. And I do that, but I didn't want that to be the majority of my time when I had a camera in my hand. So I tend to want to focus on personal projects, art projects, the books, the prints, shooting things for me and then licensing them after the fact. And the best way that I could do that was by, yeah, continuing to work part-time outside of photography, and that would enable me to focus my time when I am doing photography on 80% of the things that I wanted to do and 20% of the things that other people wanted me to do. So it's a bit of a hybrid setup, yeah.
I like that. There's a thing Casey Neistat says about how he worked to make movies, didn't make movies to work, and he still tries to kind of maintain that mindset so that he's focused on making the things that he wants to make.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
then you can't buy him, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, if and I think as well that um I do know other full-time photographers, and they can get, I guess, stuck in a rut with just constantly shooting work that's directed and not actually shooting any of the things that they want to shoot, because it is so all-encompassing to do that sometimes. Um, which I think, yeah, it would be frustrating. I think if there's other things that you want to do, if you didn't have projects that you want to do other than directed work, great. But I think there's probably lots of photographers that do want to shoot things that they want to shoot. So yeah,
Yeah, I think inevitably you're going to have ideas and it probably makes it easier to do the commercial thing if it's not going the way and you're
yeah,
not going to win that argument with an art director. Makes it easier to know that you can go and do anything that you want to do later.
yeah,
You've got an avenue for that.
exactly. Yeah.
I sometimes think about that in terms of this. Like, it's quite nice that I'm just in charge of it and I can just talk to people. I went to Wetzlar last year to Leica and spoke to the chairman of Leica and Andreas Kaufmann. And I was rushing around because I'm a team of one. I was setting stuff up on my own. And I said, sorry, this is the downside of being a team of one. And he was like, well, there's also an upside. And I was like, okay,
That's right.
that's a good point. So for you, kind of what's sort of looming as a project now then? You've got the historical work, you've got a little bit of architecture, you've got a little bit of kind of commercially stuff. Are you kind of cooking the next book, or are you just, letting the winds take you?
Um, yeah, I have actually most recently been starting to think about the next book. And there's been some new work that I've been shooting in the past few months that I haven't shared anywhere. And just seeing how that integrates with some older work. Because I guess when it came to the process of making the first book, it, it, it yeah, I had to be clear that I wanted the series of images to feel cohesive and feel like its own unique a piece of story, I suppose. And as I was going through the process of culling those images down to the files that were in the book, I had to cull some images that on their own individually might have been strong images, but didn't fit with the concept of what I was trying to share. So I've got, all these other images that I'm sitting on that, um, yeah, I still want to find a place somewhere for, and as a finished piece of work. So I guess, yeah, there's ongoing threads of series that I've been shooting. And yeah, I guess that's where I'm sort of at now, as I'm feeling like, okay, this feels a bit cohesive. So that's pretty much where I've got to at the moment. Yeah, so from a book point of view, that's probably the main thing at the go. Yeah.
I think we need more distance from our work than we often get. I think that's because it happens both ways. You either come back from something and go, oh, I got nothing and that was dreadful, or you go, I'm hot shit, and then you plow ahead with something, and then months later you're looking at it and going, oh, do you know what? I didn't. And I think kind of it sounds like you do it right. Like you're giving yourself space. It's almost like you've got the photos and then put them in a
Oh
drawer,
yeah.
and then you're collecting.
Yeah. I think there's two aspects of that in terms of how I think about how I shoot. So there's an initial buffer aspect to shooting the film in that you shoot and you don't get it back. Yeah, you can take it down and you can get it the next day, but I don't do that. Usually it's 2 or 3 or 4 weeks minimum after I've shot it before I see the image for the first time. So that disconnects you from the initial day of excitement of, oh, I feel it's good. A few weeks later, you've forgotten what you've shot. Some shots, not all of them. You can't remember some of the others. Like, was that a good one? I can't remember. I felt good, but I don't know. So there's a bit of a natural short-term dissociation, and I think that is helpful. Because I think if you're shooting and looking the same day and you're editing straight away, I think that can also lose some of the enjoyment for you because delaying reviewing your images for the first point can give you something to look forward to. And I think having something to look forward to is helpful as a photographer. So I think that's good. But then separately from that, yes. So I do genuinely have a lot of images that haven't shown to anyone. I love keeping them for myself for quite a long period of time. In some instances, some's not, but in some instances, yeah. I love sitting on it for a year before I share an image type thing. And I did find when I was going through the process of collating images for the first book that there were some images that originally I felt were B-roll images, and there was a different angle from the same scene. But in my mind, I hadn't really evaluated the other image. I was sort of seen it. I'm like, no, no, this is the better shot. But when I went to look through them and I go, right, what else did I see around that day? What did I find? I actually found that some of the images that I originally thought were lesser than the ones that I'd chosen were actually probably the better and stronger image. So I think giving that time of revisiting stuff a year, 2 years, 3 years down the fact and letting it sit and coming at it with fresh eyes and reinterpreting it can be extremely powerful.
And probably gives you confidence in your process a little bit more as well because you've got so much distance. You're like, you trust yourself. I feel like this need to immediately process and then immediately post online and then immediately get some likes. And then if you don't like it, it's just the wrong thing for our collective process, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. I think, yeah, the immediacy of it all um, can make you feel like you're feeding the machine, like you're just I
Mm.
think and that's again is another reason why I enjoy shooting film is that the whole thing slowed down, forcibly slowed down, but that is a good thing. And yeah, shooting and sharing and shooting and sharing, this whole need to grab attention, yeah, I don't think it's creatively great. I think it can, stifle your creativity. So, yeah, I think keeping things for a time, letting them simmer and sit and, age a bit, and give you time to reinterpret them. And obviously also get into, reviews of it from other people and what do they think work and other people's opinions is critical too when you're culling and trying to find a series that's cohesive. But yeah, I think the whole immediacy aspect of social media is not good.
No, I think we're working that out now. It's sort of I don't want to overstate it, but it's like to some extent this generation smoking of like we're gonna view it really differently in about 10 years, even 5.
Yeah.
You know, you're reviewing slowly. I'm really excited that you've got like images you're just sort of keeping. I quite like that. Like I'm not sure I'm strong enough, for want of a better word, to kind of leave things for a year and not show it to anyone.
Yeah.
Like I'd at least have to sort of flash it around. But you've got that project on the go. Presumably as well, you've got like little commercial things that will come in and then will like feed inspiration into projects as well, like as you're going.
Yeah. And some of that's, I guess, architecture bits and pieces, some of it's portraiture. Yeah. And I think, and another way that I do work, I mentioned before, is licensing. So I get briefs from the agency that I shoot for. There's a London-based agency that I shoot for, and briefs come in a couple of times a week for various things that they're looking for. And it might be, hey, have you got photos from Venice, or have you got photos from New Zealand or whatever? So, it's constantly a process of trawling the archive and sending that over to them to fulfill the briefs and, seeing which of those images fit for the client. And then on the flip side of that, I'm also thinking when I go out to shoot, and to be honest, I haven't shot a lot with, models and whatnot, but I can see that there's an opportunity there to work with them to get images that I can see, they're looking for from a client point of view. And then again, from that, if I'm looking at, heading on a trip, where might I go that might be interesting from their point of view, so I can shoot images for them as well as shooting images for me at the same time in parallel, which is fantastic. And so that's something that I do. But I guess the really lovely part of working with them is that they access images on my archive that I genuinely didn't shoot for anyone except for myself. And they are images that people end up using. And that's fantastic when that all works out.
That, I think, is a nice note to kind of bring us home on. It's like, if you trust the process, like, because you weren't shooting that with any expectation. And so consequently, the work is probably better.
Yeah, it I don't know if it's better or not, but it definitely was 100% shot from the heart. And if that can be used in a commercial field, when it was genuinely image that I initially only shot for myself, yeah, there's joy there for sure.
Oh, joy. End on joy. There we go. Perfect way to bring it home. It's like you planned it, Mark. For people listening who don't know your work then and want to find it, where's the best place for them to find a bit of Mark?
So my website is www.markforbes, markforbes.com.au, and you can find me on Instagram at _markforbes_.
Nice. There's something very lovely about having a .com.au. It's a bit like having a .co.uk. Very few countries around the world get to enjoy that kind of double extension on .com. So boring.
Yeah, there probably was someone else with a .com, but yeah,
that's actually why.
But you can't get a .com.au unless you've got an Australian business number or something. So yeah.
There you go. You're in a club. I need to go and check if primelenses.co.uk is available. Maybe it is. I should get it. While you should save it, just in case. Yeah, do something fun with it. Well, brilliant, Mark. This was lovely. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks. I really appreciate you having me on board, Neil. Much appreciated.
Well, there we go. A really big thanks to Mark for being on the show and for holding the record, I think, for being the fastest guest to send me a headshot for a thumbnail in history. It arrived almost instantly after we stopped recording and we started chatting about it, and I said it was one of the things I needed. So, huge thank you to Mark. There's a gold star for you. If you enjoyed that episode, don't forget that you can like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, all those lovely places. Please do feel free to leave us a review, give us some stars if you're inclined to do so, and hit me up on DMs or email. Let me know what you think. The great joy of doing this is talking to all of you out there week to week as we bring these episodes through. I can't believe it's 120 now. Where is the time going? That's insane. You can also support the show directly through Patreon, and there is a merch store where you can pick up an umbrella or a mug or a pin badge or something fun like that as well. Well, I think that will just about do the trick, Have an amazing week, get out there, photograph something, and then put it in a shoebox and don't look at it for a year. I think we'd all do well to do what Mark does. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.